Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Fundamentals Matter Part 1, titled Leveraging the Power Behind Cellebrite UFED. During this webinar, you'll learn how to get the most out of your Cellebrite UFED, as we'll get into the ins and outs behind the tool. We'll highlight tips and tricks, as well as clarify any questions you may have. Your presenter today is Heather Mahalik, the Senior Director of Digital Intelligence here at Cellebrite. Heather is a rockstar digital forensics researcher, blogger, examiner, and instructor. Heather, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ariel. This is going to be a two-part series webinar, and I plan to tell you what I'm going to cover immediately in this webinar, so you know that if it's a good fit for you. And then also at the end of this webinar, give you some hints on what is coming next. In 2020, I did a Fundamentals Matter, and it was more of leveraging the power behind Physical Analyzer, and we realized how helpful it was. So the goal behind this is for me to speak on behalf of all of Cellebrite and teach you really how to leverage UFED, the ins and outs behind the tool, maybe some tips and tricks, and just clarify any curiosities or outstanding questions that you may have. At the end of this webinar, my contact information will be provided, but again, you're always welcome to reach out to me directly. I'm heather@cellebrite.com. You can reach out to tech support. You can reach out to your local sales team, your SEs. We're all here to help you. So I want to dive right in and talk about UFED. The agenda. First and foremost, we have to talk about settings. This is one of the boring things that is necessary. If your tools are not set up to function in a way that you expect, you can't control really what's being extracted from the device. This even includes the simple task of when you install UFED, do you follow that pesky instruction to reboot? Rebooting my PC is one of the worst things that happens to me, I will not lie, because I always have so many things open and loaded that I rely upon for every day. So when you update, you are going to have to go through, make sure the settings are correct, reboot your system, and follow those instructions. So we're going to start with the basics there. And then we're going to go through all the extraction options. What do they mean? How can you rely upon them? And items like that. We want to talk about preparing the device. And for this, I have recorded the screen of an iPhone and I've recorded the screen of an Android to show you exactly how to set that up. I'm also going to go and show you myself holding different cables, what they mean, when you may need to use them. Where we're going to finish this webinar is the features that are built inside of UFED that will help you get unstuck, if that's a way you want to think about it. So you get your device into a state, you need to get it out of that state. What can you actually do, and what are these features that are built in? And then ultimately, what is going to roll into part 2 is where do you begin? What do we recommend for you? If you get one extraction, do you need to get additional extractions? So all of these things are going to come into play during this webinar. And again, if you have any questions or things you wish to see, please let me know. All right, for getting started, the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to break into a demo here in a moment, we need to talk about installation. Installation seems easy enough, but this is something that seems to get a lot of people hung up. So first thing you need to realize is you cannot have any other Cellebrite product running in the background. Everything must be closed in order for proper installation to occur. There are different ways to install an update. You may go out to your portal and download an update. You may have your workplace provide you a file saying, hey, here is the latest and greatest version, please update. Or you may be prompted by your tool if you're working in a non-air-gapped network. And what I mean by that is if you are connected to the internet, UFED and UFED 4PC, or if you want to call it the Touch 2 and UFED 4PC, same thing, I'll just say UFED. If you're connected to the internet, you will get a prompt saying an update's available. An update is an update and all should work the same. But keep in mind, if you're using UFED 4PC, you cannot have Physical Analyzer running in the background. You cannot have Pathfinder. So all of these things will have to be closed in order to install. And also, get your mindset right. You will have to reboot after installation. That way, UFED can go and grab and update any drivers that are required for the tool to function correctly. One of the common errors that I see all the time on Discord or on Twitter or through an email even is my device is not being recognized. My USB cable is not working. And I always ask the simple question, did you reboot your system? Do you know how many times Ronan Engler, who works at Cellebrite with me, has said, Heather, did you listen? Did you reboot? And I'm like, no, I didn't reboot because I have 18,000 things open that I rely upon. You really have to reboot. It is really important for you to get the most benefit from the tool. Once we have everything installed and we've rebooted our PC, we're going to take a look at settings. So you know what they mean. You actually know what you're changing, and you completely control the environment. And that's really what we want to take a look at here. So we're going to go into that in a moment, but I just want to make sure everyone is aware. Install, restart. Follow the instructions that pop up. Control your settings, and then address any errors. You don't want to ignore an error, because usually what will happen is it will come back and haunt you later in your extraction process. When we talk about UFED and why you need it, there are many things that the UFED can do. So obviously you can use it to access devices. In addition to that, you can leverage UFED to bypass patterns, locks, pins, and different things that may keep you out of Android and iOS devices. Obviously, you have to have legal authority to be handling these devices or some kind of consent from the user in order to access this. Your life is much easier if you are given consent, you are given legal authority, and you are provided with a passcode. But we have to think about devices where that isn't as easy. What if you have a device that's in a cold state? And when I say cold state, what I mean is the device has been powered off, has been restarted, and the user of the device has not re-entered the passcode. This is also something we will see with file-based encrypted devices. This is a problem across many Android and iOS devices. So if it's in a cold state, your job will be harder. There are many webinars and blogs available on Cellebrite's website to go out and see more information on that. And I do plan to cover more of that in part 2 of this series. So that's your first little teaser. So obviously we want to gain access to the device, and we want to extract the very best data set that meets our legal needs for the investigation. So if you are simply allowed legally to extract pictures in SMS, you want to make sure you are using a method within UFED that extracts pictures in SMS. But if you have consent or authority to the entire device, you want to get the very best extraction possible. You want to make sure that if there's a SIM card in that Android, or an SD card or a micro SD card, or any of these other attached devices, if you are allowed to access it as part of your authority, you want to grab it. So you want to make sure you can get it. And then you have to think about all the other things that go into this. Do you have the cables you need? If you're out on site responding to an incident, did you bring your entire kit with you? Is the device powered enough? What if it requires something like emergency download mode? What if it requires you to restart it in certain ways? Are you prepared to do all these things? It's very, very important that you know how to leverage the UFED so you can make the most of your investigations. And that is my goal of this entire webinar here. I want to teach you how to become the best mobile extractor, if that's even a term. We'll make that a term, mobile extractor. So we're going to start with the settings. Here you can see this is UFED for PC, and that's what I figured it would be easiest to teach you on today. That's also what I use the most. I do have a Touch 2 here in my office, but I like to keep everything right in front of me on one system and just control it. So I'm going to start with looking at the settings, which you can see that red arrow pointing to. And I'm actually going to bring up UFED right in front of this screen. So what you should see now is we have UFED here. And I'm going to look at a few things across the top here. So the first one is this settings button. Here, you will see everything that is checked by default, and you can make these changes. Please ensure after every single update, you go through and look at these settings and make sure they are what you want them to be. So you can see here, English is my default language. This uninstall reminder, I like this one. What the uninstall reminder will do is if you do a logical extraction, Cellebrite will ask you permission to install a client on that mobile device. You give it permission. At the end, it will remind you to uninstall. If you operate in covert mode, it is going to remind you to make any changes. If you made any changes to the device, it is going to remind you how to undo them. And this is a huge part of many investigations. Do you want to leave your forensic footprint behind? Whether you do or you don't, this is something that it depends on where you work and how you function as an organization. Document everything you've done. It is so important. Make sure you also list the version of UFED used for the extraction. Because let's say in 3 months, something else may be added. We may pull more data from a specific Samsung device versus what was pulled today. So if you are testifying to it, someone may say, why did Heather only get this much information? Because I extracted this suspect's phone and now I have all this information. It goes back to the version and it goes back to your documentation. If you want to save the default location where your extractions are saved to, this is where you're going to do it. So you could browse and say, you know what? I don't want it to be there. I actually want it to be in my UFED fundamentals directory and take it from there. It's totally up to you on what you want to get. Okay, you can also save or change where you want to save your extractions to. So you can click browse and you can browse out to external devices. You could save to a server. You could do many things. By default, it's going to be in your user profile, app data, local, my UFED extractions. You can set predefined filters. Now, one thing you want to be careful with is if you're sharing a system and that box is checked, make sure it's not going to change the views that anyone would see when they have options. I like to extract deleted data from SIM. I like to enable Android backup APK downgrade. Now, this one is one of the most destructive options in UFED. So if you worry about those on your team that may accidentally make a mistake by selecting it, deselect it, and then it won't be shown in the main menu. I like to keep it there because I understand the risk, and I will explain that to you. Show device restart alerts. This is very important. The reason you want this there is if you have a device that is in a hot state. So we talked about cold. Hot would be the exact opposite. Hot is powered on, unlocked, recently unlocked by a passcode or PIN, and you can leverage everything on that device. So I like to know if a restart is going to occur because it warns me, hey, this is how I feel like it's talking to me. UFED saying, hey, Heather, guess what? That hot device that's in your hand is going to become really cold as soon as I'm done with this extraction because it's going to reboot. This is very, very important. And this will really play a role in part 2 when we talk about using Checkmate and if you have a device that's already jailbroken with Checkgrain and what that looks like. For cable and tip, do you want it to tell you the tip number or the cable number? I prefer the tip number, and you'll see that as we go on. And then there's other options too. Case details, include camera screen. Do you want to choose different logos? What do you want your video quality to be? For me, based upon my extraction of a lot of test data right now, I just have low. I don't really care about the high quality. But if videos are a huge part of your investigation, you may want to change that quality. All right, so now that was general. We're progressing. We're going into reports now. And I just have the very bare minimum here. This is the default. How do you want your report folder format to look? Like, what do you want it to call it? And you can change that and say, you know what? No, I want the dates first because it's easier to search by. What kind of format do you want it to be? Do you want to compact it? Do you want notes separate? Do you want them embedded? What do you want the language to be? What type of hashes do you want? And do you want partial extraction? I like partial extraction. So let's say something fails or things go wrong. Will it be able to save what it has collected so far? And then you can obviously create custom fields. So we're progressing on. System. Do you want to hear notification sounds? That's honestly what catches my attention. I am horrible at paying attention to the screen during extraction, except for Androids, because I've learned my lesson way too many times. I like to hear the ding, knowing that UFED is alerting me to something. Do you want log files? And you'll see here, if you see export system information and export application logs, if you ever reach out to Cellebrite support and you're having an issue, they may ask you for logs. This is commonly where you will go to get those. Okay, for app categorization, this is very important, and I did a Tip Tuesday on this. So you go out to mycellebrite.com, products and licenses, and then responder UFED and add-ons. And it will tell you the date for the latest app categorization database. Now, why this is important, if you want to simply extract applications on the fly, and you don't want to go through and get all the contacts, call logs, pictures, email, you need to have the latest and greatest so when it's categorized for you, you can find it. And then you will browse out to that file and you would save it. Extraction counter, this is tracking how many extractions have occurred on the device. Obviously, your licensing information is listed here. This is also where you can deactivate it, change your license, and then do more things. Version. I like to have automatically check for software updates. This is only going to work if you are connected to the internet. What you can also do is you can update by going to File. So if you work in a location, maybe it's a classified lab or a place where you cannot connect to the internet, you can load directly from a file onto your UFED. On UFED for PC, you can also just double click the installer and install it that way. It's pretty easy. For Commander, is your device managed or unmanaged? And you can just swipe that here. And then there's activity log, and this is showing you what I have extracted. User permissions. Do you want to require a login? Do you want to require a password? Do you want to disable USB device extraction? I go with the defaults here. And then as I'm scrolling across, you can see you can add in SOPs. So your agency can add in standard operating procedures to provide guidance on the UFED. And then you press save, and all of your actions are saved into the device. All right, now that we know our settings, we want to get started. And you can see I have the slide in the background. I just want to bring this up. So most people would go straight to mobile device. They know that's what they want to extract. We'll talk about some of the others, the SIM, mass storage, UFED, and camera here in a moment. But before we even get to mobile device, I want to show you what you're going to see in the next screen, which is under this question mark, and it's called extraction flow. But I'll go to the slide first. So this is essentially guidance on where you should start. What type of device do you have? What is the support for it? And again, I'm going to bring up UFED. You get to this by clicking on the question mark. So think of this as the help. So we click on the help and we choose extraction flow. And you can see you can choose your specific device. So let's say it says Samsung devices. And it's telling you, okay, this is what each description means. So EDL, which I mentioned earlier, the emergency download mode. This is telling you it's a generic physical extraction. It's a bypass capability for Qualcomm. It tells you the supported chipsets. So if you see something, you're like, I don't know what that means. What does partial file system mean? This would be lock bypass partial file system extraction. So if it bypasses a lock, it is only going to get the things that the lock is not protecting. So there are different terminologies in here that you may want to see. Also, it will give you flows on what you can do. So if you have an LG device, is it a Qualcomm chip or is it a MediaTek chip? And then it's going to tell you what is supported and what isn't. Do you notice the little lock and unlock? So on the right-hand side, it's saying, okay, if it's unlocked, you can do Smart ADB, Advanced ADB, and ADB is the Android Debug Bridge, and Logical and File System. And more things of this nature will be covered in part 2 of this series, as well as all of these other methods and what do they actually mean. I'm saving that for part 2 because it's a little bit more in depth, and hopefully after this one, you will become more aware of all the things that are going on. So please use that extraction flow. All right, so I'm going to turn this to me, and we are going to have you take a look at the different cables and things that we're going to see. All right, so I'm going to readjust the camera here, and I'm going to show you a recording that I had just taken from my iPhone and introduce you to some of the cables.
Prompt you to leverage during your extraction. The first is this UFED device adapter. And you will see, all right, let's cover some cables that UFED may prompt you to leverage during your extraction. The first is this UFED device adapter. And you will see here there are many different connections that you can connect your cables to. Follow the instructions provided by UFED. Make sure you plug it in, the adapter is recognized, and then you connect the phone to continue with your extraction. There are several devices that rely on this UFED device adapter. Everything from a BlackBerry to handheld GPS devices to a lot of Samsung phones. Another one that you may find you need is this EDL cable. Make sure, again, you follow the instructions and just go through the proper steps in order to get the very best extraction. If you are prompted for an OTG or an on-the-go cable, you will see that those are provided here. They are listed, for example, here as cable number 501 OTG. Just make sure you connect it accordingly to the phone and then to your computer. And something that I have used a ton that many people may not have are these little jumper cables, and that's what I've always called them. They provide additional power to the battery, and I know it's really hard to see those clips there, but they are really, really important. If you are prompted to use the extra power cable, this is what you want to go with. And don't worry if you misconnect the positive and the negative under the battery. You're not going to shock yourself. It's not that much of a charge, and you shouldn't harm the device. The final oldie but goodie that I've always used are these little Nokia adapters. And you have to be careful. These foam items are in place because you'll see there are little connectors there and also connectors here. You would pop out the battery and connect it underneath the device. Chances are rare that you're going to use something like this, but I like to show it. If you see knockoff devices, I've used these a ton, especially with the Chinex kit. But these items here, your EDL and your UFED device adapter, these are the most common cables that you may need in your extraction.
Okay, so now let's move on to preparing the device and how everything is going to look. You may come across these two screens, and this is one of the really important aspects of acquiring both an iPhone and an Android. You have to pay attention to the phone. You cannot take your eyes off of it. So on the left, we can see an iPhone setting where it says, do you want to trust this computer, trust or don't trust? During the extraction, it may prompt you more than one time if the phone reboots. Something else to keep in mind is it may prompt you to enter the passcode before you can select trust. So always document the passcode when it's provided to you. Same thing with the Android. On the right, allow USB debugging. You press OK, and it tells you the computer's fingerprint and what that is. This is the trust for an Android to the computer. However, in order to get into USB debugging mode, you already need that passcode on certain Android devices in order to make it to that point. So it's very, very important that you realize how to do this. I'm now going to show you a video on how to get the device into these modes. So here is an Android, and I pre-recorded the screen for you. And you go into settings, and then you make sure you scroll down, and you want to go into about phone. And you want to select software version and then tap the build number 7 times. So you can see it's counting down. And then once you're there, press the back arrow. and you will scroll down and see developer options. Now you can go in and follow everything that UFED tells you. So stay awake, USB debugging, and select OK. Again, you may be prompted for the passcode to do that. Verify apps over USB, turn that off. Sometimes stay awake, you want to make sure that's turned on. So if you missed anything, just review what the screen is telling you and ensure it's set. And again, this is for Android. Now, the tricky part for iOS, and I'm going to show you an example of an iPhone 10. I myself created these videos along with Carolina from our marketing team, and she took my voice and put them over how to get iPhones into DFU mode. It is such a pain. I leverage these videos almost every time I'm trying to do a checkmate extraction. And again, checkmate will be covered in part 2, but for now I'm going to play you one of the video examples.
You may need to first place your device into recovery mode. With the phone powered off, plug the device into your forensic workstation and launch iTunes. Next, you need to quickly press and release the volume up, then the volume down button, then press and hold the side button until you see the recovery mode screen. You have successfully entered recovery mode. To successfully enter DFU mode, you need to quick press the volume up button, followed by a quick press of the volume down button, and then press and hold the side button until the screen completely shuts off. Now simultaneously press and hold both the side and volume down button for 5 seconds. Release the side button while holding the volume down button for an additional 10 seconds. You should now be in DFU mode.
So something I want to caution you on here, you will see once you even hit recovery mode or the USB is connected, that continue button may illuminate to be blue, and it tricks a lot of people into thinking, yes, I made DFU mode. If you see anything but a black screen on that iPhone or iPad, and that continue button is illuminated, you're not in the proper mode. So if you see the boot screen, if you see Apple, and that's usually what happens when you're trying to get into DFU mode, the Apple symbol will appear, and that means you're not connected. You want to make sure your screen is completely black and you see that continue button. Very, very important to know that you're in the proper mode. All right, so your device is prepared. You have your correct cable. You've read the screen. You installed everything properly. Now let's talk about getting stuck and what this looks like. So I'm going to bring up UFED again and show you live what these device tools look like. So I'm going to choose close from where I was and go into device tools. If you get stuck in a mode and you're not sure what is going on, so maybe you are in recovery mode, also known as Odin mode, you can go into device tools and say, help me, and it will give you exit Odin mode. Remember, you can always click on the I for information and it tells you what it can do. So if your battery dies and it gets stuck, if the device, something is happening, an upload of a bootloader and it's just stuck, this is how you can get out of these situations. If you have iTunes encryption enabled, meaning the tool acquired it and left a password behind, this is how you can go through and remove it. It's going to remove 1234, assuming that is the passcode that was set by UFED. Exit Android recovery mode is one that I use often. If you're stuck in that boot loop, again, the boot loop of failure, it's super annoying, and once you hit it, you'll know what I mean. Go in here and leverage these tools. Now, some, you may never use them. You may not need it. We're going to talk about chat capture in part 2 of this series. We're also going to talk about traces left behind and how to remove some of these items. But please just know that this exists for you within UFED. You can click back and get right back to where you were. So the device tools are very important. So now let's get started. Now we actually want to start doing some extractions. So the very first thing you need to do is you need to know what is in your hands. Which device is on your desk? The make and model matter. You really need to either let UFED auto detect and decide for you, or be sure which make and model is there. There's something else that UFED will do called suggested profiles. And let's say your device isn't listed as a supported one, The UFED is smart enough to scan it and say, hey, you know what? This device is very similar to device X, which I know I do a good job on. I'm going to suggest this for you. And then with that profile, it gives you all the options on which it can extract. And I'm going to walk you through that. Before you start anything, you have to consider legal authority. What are you allowed to extract from this mobile device? And you want to make sure you're not exceeding any expectations of legalness when it comes to this. What do you have consent or legal authority to do? The state the device is in. I mentioned hot and cold. If it's a hot device and it's powered on, you have the passcode, you have much more access than someone who has a cold device that has been sitting in a desk drawer for 3 months until legal authority was provided in order to extract that data. Keep in mind the extraction flow. Did you review it? Do you have a general idea of what you can actually do and where the UFED may take you and what it's going to prompt you to do? And then something else you want to consider too is, do you need more than one extraction? Are you confident with the extraction method you've selected? And what kind of time do you have with these devices? Because that's obviously going to be a huge thing. Mobile device extraction can take some time. It's not always the fastest thing to do. Some Androids, imagine if you have a 256 gig Android that has a micro SD card inside of it that's also 256 gigs, that's going to take you some time to extract that information. What we're going to do now is look at an Android. I'm going to walk you through extracting an Android device, and I'm going to talk you through the way here. So we're going to choose mobile device, and this is where you have some options. Do you want to do auto detect, or do you want to browse out? You may see some errors as we're walking through this demo here. So again, mobile device, and I'm going to choose, let's see, auto detect. And you'll notice if you don't see auto detect immediately work, you want to unplug and plug that device back in. Make sure USB debugging is set up. Make sure everything's working. You should see the spinning Cellebrite circle immediately happen. Now, what you're seeing here is a good example of something's not right. Either Windows has captured the USB prior to UFED taking control of it, or a setting is wrong on that device. So once it's spinning for a while like this, I will typically unplug it and abort it and try again, or wait for the Android console to appear. And you can see you can usually click on console, but now I'm going to have to wait because I'm in a stuck point, essentially. And you can see Windows just recognized my device. So Windows intercepted it instead of UFED. So what I can do here is choose console or find device manually. And I want to show you different options here. So let's select console. And here it tells you it's going to use ADB, that Android debug bridge. It requires USB debugging to be enabled, and it walks you through everything I had demoed in the previous slide. So press OK. All right, so it may take a few seconds or a few minutes for the Android debug bridge to recognize, or you may get an error that it did not work, which also occurs. So we want to see when that is going to appear. All right, so here we can see we get device information. So it tells us right away, things I like to look at is the fact that it has file-based encryption, that it's not rooted, tells you the battery. It tells me that I have a Samsung Android device. It tells me that SMG970U1. And this is something I want you to keep in mind because I'm going to show you how to manually detect these devices as well. But I would take a screenshot of this. I would take a picture of this and include this in my notes. You can always refresh it, or you can just press OK to continue. At this point, the console will disconnect, and you should get a pop-up saying that it disconnected successfully. Okay, so Android debug console succeed. Now, when this screen is done, you have an option on what you want to do next. So we want to do find device manually. You don't want to select console again. Now, if you are adamant like I am, I'll always try auto detect again because I unplugged it and plugged it back in, but you can see Windows just intercepted it again. I see the Galaxy S10 at the bottom. And usually when that happens, it doesn't work. And it's Windows and UFED fighting for rights to that USB, which is the frustrating part. So I usually wait and then say, never mind, I'm going in. Now there are different tabs across the top. Vendors, generic profiles, recently used, which shows ones that I've recently used, and then vendors again, and all. Now you can search for a vendor name. I could search for Samsung, and you can see it. You can easily identify what you're looking for. If you want to search for the model number, you can type that in as well. Now, something to be careful is which tab are you in while searching for that model number. So if I type in SMG970, do you notice I don't see anything? If I were sitting live in a room with you, I would ask you why. And I would hope you would not say it's case sensitive. So let's try that. And you're like, still not looking good. It's because I'm in the vendors tab. I need to be in the all in order to see the models. Vendors would be Samsung, Apple, LG, Huawei. So you want to make sure you are in the correct place. In part 2 of this series, I'll talk about generic profiles, but for now we're focusing on all and vendors. And I'm going to choose the Samsung GSM SMG97U. Now you have many options in here, and some of these are going to be covered in part 2 of the series, such as chat capture. So if you're curious about that, stay tuned for part 2. For screenshot and camera, click on the eye if you want more information about it. And UFED will tell you what the support is for that and what the information is, what is going to be included in that extraction. For physical root, when you click on the eye, it tells you it works for pre-rooted devices only. It does not root the device. So it's telling you it is not going to go in and root the device. It tells you the type of extraction it's going to be, what it can and cannot do. For file system, this is something I'm going to cover in part 2. It is going to go through and try to get the most information from that device. And there's also selective file system, which will be covered in part 2. Advanced logical, this could be simply an Android backup. It could be closer to a file system extraction. It varies depending upon device and the make and model. So there are many things that you can get within UFED. This is where you have decisions to make. This is where you have to choose what makes the most sense. So we also have Android backup downgrade APK, and Qualcomm Live recommended. So click on the eye. It's going to tell you how to prepare the device, what it's going to do in order to get access to that device. And you'll see some of these will do a temporary root. Android backup will walk you through how it's going to create that logical extraction and what to expect. Android backup APK, you'll see it tells you only do this if you have done everything else. It is going to change the state of the applications in order to extract information. And that's the one that you can avoid if you want. So I'm going to choose to do an extraction here. And where I want to save it, select next. And I'm going to have to use this adapter. So this is the adapter that I had shown to you previously. So it's telling you have to connect the UFED adapter, which I'm doing now. The buttons will flash red until it's initialized and I have my device connected. So as I'm doing this right here, this is what you can see. And you may be able to hear some dinging on my system. Make sure you follow these settings, and the continue button will not turn green until that device is in its proper state for acquisition. Or sorry, blue. It's definitely blue. Select continue. And as you're waiting here, remember, here I am trying to do the Qualcomm Live, and I'm going to do a demo for you in part 2 of this series on what it's going to look like. But it's going to warn you if the device is going to restart. Remember, this was a setting, and I said yes. So I want to say continue. It's telling you it may restart. It could take that hot device and put it into a cold state. I'm not going to go completely through all of this because it does take time. And again, I will do more of this with selective file system. What if you just want to get specific applications? All that's going to be in part 2. So the connection process does take some time. Make sure you're paying attention to the Android at this point. It's very, very important. You have to pay just as much attention to the UFED as you do the phone itself. All right, so once the device connection is established, the extraction will continue. And at the end, you will see a screen saying, what do you want to do? Do you want to finish? Do you want to open it in Physical Analyzer? Or do you want to exit? And you'll see that in the iOS walkthrough where I show you an additional screen. So now let's talk iOS. What is this going to look like? So again, you've put the phone in the proper state. You have followed all the instructions, and we need to see what is going on here. So auto detect worked. It tells me that I have an Apple iPhone X, and I say great. And you'll see you have fewer extraction options. So no physical, not possible. You can do the screenshots, you can do the camera. Normally where I start is advanced logical. This is most likely the very best extraction method you are going to get for an iPhone. This is where Checkmate and all the cool stuff is going to live. And then some people still like to get just logical. Maybe you are only allowed to get pictures, or you're only allowed to get SMS. You would want to go to logical because you can choose specifically what you want. So let's go into advanced logical. And here we have full file system checkmate. And this tells you it is going to temporarily jailbreak the device. It's going to run in RAM. Checkra1n is going to hit it. And it's going to get the very best data set that you will get. This is my favorite extraction in all of UFED. Full file system would be for a device that's already jailbroken. Stay tuned for part 2 on that. I'm choosing file system, the very basic one here, and just going through all the options with you, and it tells you what is possible for each iOS version. So get your device into the correct state, and when you connect it, the blue button should illuminate, and you can press continue. It's telling you to trust the device, which you had seen in a previous screen, so I'm pressing trust, and now it's connecting. Connection with iPhone, I feel like, does not take as long as Android. So here you can see backup not encrypted. It tells you the iOS version, and I'll talk more about that. And then it's saying to extract the most information, you need to encrypt that backup. And that's at 1234. That is very, very important. And I will talk more about encryption in part 2 and why you need to encrypt the backups. All right, so you can see the extraction starting, it's continuing, it's dumping all of our data. And depending on the size of the phone, that's how long it's going to take. This could be a very quick extraction. It could be done in minutes. It could take several hours. Okay, so mine finished. You could choose to do more extractions. You can open in Physical Analyzer. You can see the folder, or you can simply select Finish. Now, if you choose to finish, you're back at the UFED screen. And then you would have to go and load into Physical Analyzer manually, which is fine, and that's what many people do. So those were just 2 glimpses on what to expect from an Android and an iOS. And I am, again, going to walk you through more of these in part 2. Make sure you pay attention to the device. Look for password prompts. Look for any trust acknowledgements. If you cannot get an Android to connect, something I recommend you do is revoke USB debugging right where you turned it on and plug it in again. You are going to need the password for both Android and iOS devices in order to enable the required settings. So it's very, very important that you know what you're doing. Now, this is kind of the reality check. Don't give up so easily. Some of these extraction methods take time. They take an effort on your part. They take patience. I am not good with patience. If you know me, some people are amazed that I still do mobile forensics because I lack patience. You can do this. We are here to support you. You will get errors. So this is an error I see recently, and I grabbed a screenshot of it. So Qualcomm Live failed. If you're on any of the listservs or if you see chatter, people get very frustrated with Qualcomm Live. What I find is restarting the device really helps. After it restarts, I like to unlock it and try it that way. Make sure when your device reboots, developer mode stays on, USB debugging is still enabled, that it's set to stay awake. Be patient and keep trying. It will work, and when it does, it's amazing. Consider the other support features in UFED. So did you acquire the SIM card? Do you need to access the UFED camera for pictures? Do you have any mass storage? So maybe you have SD cards that were associated with it. Maybe you have a random USB that you found sitting with the phone. And then there's the drones. So Danny Garcia from our training department, he is a drone master. If you have questions on all these external things, I definitely recommend that you look at Cellebrite training. If you want to get more context on how to use the UFED, Cellebrite training is fantastic at teaching you the ins and outs, all the nitty gritty, not just giving you my opinion on this, but really teaching you how to use the UFED and then certifying you in it. So when you are under this pile and you are screaming for help, what should you do? What I recommend is walk away and come back. Does the problem still exist, or are you creating the problem? And I hate to say it that way, but it's true. I create many problems for myself out of frustration. My device rebooted, and somehow USB debugging was turned off. And I spent hours trying to make it connect before checking that. Check the state of the phone. DFU mode, when I get into device firmware update mode, device firmware upgrade, depending on where you look at your source. When I get in that mode on the first time, I feel like I won the lottery. It is such a great feeling. It takes some patience. Are you using the right cable? If you're using the cable that came with your iPhone and you're using it on a suspect device, is the cable being recognized? Is the cable the correct one for a Samsung device, not only to charge it, but also to extract data from it? And then when you're still stuck, you looked at the help menu, you looked at the flow, reach out to us. Cellebrite has an entire tech support team that will help you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We can't just guess that you're stuck. We need you to tell us. Some final considerations that I have for you. Review the settings on the UFED. Please walk through them every single time you update. Make sure you open your extractions before you return the device so you know that you got what you expected to retrieve from that phone. Use the proper cables. Use the adapters. I've tried to bypass using the adapter, and guess what? It's not going to work. And then there's the magical advanced options and generic options. And I am going to save those for part 2 because I want you to come back and I want you to keep learning with me as I'm showing you all of these options because there are so many things. So where I'm leaving you today and what I am leading you into. In part 2 of this series, I'm going to talk about encryption. So not only Android encryption, but file-based encryption and full disk encryption, iTunes encryption, how these things can impact your extraction. I'm going to walk you through some more extractions on iOS and Android. So we'll take a look at Checkmate. We'll take a look at Qualcomm Live, MTK Live, and features like that, chat capture, all the cool things. We're going to look at generic options. And then I'm actually going to explain to you and show you at the end in Physical Analyzer what a full file system looks like, what a file system looks like, and what logical and physical look like. So what I encourage you to do, update UFED. The updates are there for a reason. It is either fixing a bug or extracting more information. Stay tuned for the next webinar and tune into it. Refer to our website, our YouTube channels, the Tip Tuesdays. Join I Beg to Differ, which we run as a live webinar. I run Life Has No Control, Alt Delete every Monday, except holidays, and I hope you will join that. We have more CTFs coming that myself, some of the SEs, and the training team are working on. There's so much out there. Matt Geckel and I have a podcast, Carved from Unallocated. So listen to all of this. And if you are still new to UFED, if you've not certified and using it, consider taking the Cellebrite training and learning and proving that you can earn that certification and that you are the master extractor. Here's my contact information. I hope to hear from you. Please let us know if you have special requests and if you can get to it before I build the slides for part 2. I will try to include them, but practice. Be patient. Make sure you control the settings, make sure you update, and follow the prompts on the phone.
Thank you, Heather. That's all the time we have today.